Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me, my host companion, it's Sejohn Sarwick. Yay!
The stupidest show on the internet.
Well, if we didn't already have a beautiful title for this week's episode, that'd probably be it. In fact, I'm going to file that one away for the next time I need a title for the episode. But, no, I don't know. Well, Sejohn hasn't seen Deadpool Wolverine yet, so we're not going to be talking about that. Your ears are safe for another week. People who are waiting to see, like...
I mean, it did also only just come out this weekend.
Right, exactly.
Like
Usually we would give 2 weeks anyway, so there's that thing. But I'm also letting people know that they're safe, that this is a spoiler-free zone if they haven't gotten out to see the movies yet. I was also
that movie in particular, to be clear, there's always
there's going to be other spoilers.
Yeah.
I hope you've seen all the Karate Kid movies, because we're going to spoil the shit out of those this week. But, welcome to the Say Report. I don't know where to start this week. I don't have a lot of things to talk about, but the things I do have to talk about, I'm pretty passionate about. You know what? We did video games late last week, so we're going to kick it off with video games, and explain why the name of this episode is The Toughest Guy in Nintendo Land, my little garbanzo beans. It's just the toughest guy in Nintendo Land. Sejohn, I sent you a selection of 10 photos.
Mm-hmm.
These will be up in the supplemental if you're part of our Discord. You should join our Discord because then you get like this bonus material and everything like that. Nintendo World Championship NES Edition released. It feels like it was with not even a whimper. Like it wasn't a bang or a whimper. It was something less than a whimper. Like a whim. Like it released on a whim.
What's a real bummer is that if they had held off on releasing it one more week, I think they would have released it on the same day that that esports was officially voted in to be a Olympic event.
Wow.
I believe 2035, I think, or something like that. But on that Thursday, a week later, they announced officially the vote had gone through by the Olympic Committee to allow esports to enter the Olympic pantheon.
Wow.
I guess is the best way to put
it. Yeah, the pantheon is exactly.
I celebrated by ordering the Shout Factory Special Edition Blu-ray of The Wizard, of course.
I have several copies of that in the house already.
But you know what? Like I would have loved to have done was celebrate by going out and on same day, day release, like buy the gold cart edition of Nintendo Land. Like I can't believe that I can't believe their poor luck because obviously, like, I don't know how they would have ever set something like that up. I'm not saying that, like, man, what were they thinking? Obviously, that's a big task to have figured out that kind of mechanic, right? But, like, that was the bigger Nintendo-esque competition, like, news in the last 2 weeks. And that's a bummer considering what they did was put out a whole fucking game.
So my question about that, you've derailed me, and I'm happy. This is a happy derailment. If it's an Olympic sport, esports, is it a summer or a winter event?
I bet that it ends up in the winter. This is the kind of stuff that they are in the process of. It's the reason why it's not going to just be like, hey, next year it's in the Olympics. They're now going to like try and figure out how to slot it in, fit it in, and exactly what the rules are going to be, because I don't know. Summer, winter, a lot of that's going to depend on where there's room for the games. That may already be. Let me be clear. I, Sejohn, don't know. I'm not saying the world doesn't know. So they may already have that part figured out. The bigger question I have, in that vein, is like, what governing body is going to be folded in here as far as like rules and standings and stuff go, because like that's kind of how this stuff works when they bring in a sport. Like this year when they brought in like breakdancing into the Olympics and stuff like that, there is I would say 99% of the time an already existing governing body of the sport that is then kind of depended on to be kind of the foundational elements of it coming into the Olympics, right? Like and so there's this kind of like, there's this weird thing in esports that we haven't really talked about because esports is relatively new. Although you and I even have some early episodes of the show kind of touching on this.
We were trying to get our slice of it, yeah.
Esports is not one thing. It's not like the NFL, right? It's not football where there's one game that they're all playing and they're all trying to like get the kind of bang out the nitty-gritty rules of each. Esports covers everything from freaking like Dota to like solitaire competitions. So like what does esports being in the Olympics even mean in that regard, right? So before they can even figure out what time of the year they're going to play it, they have to tell me what game are they playing, whose rules are they playing by, and like what are they going to be okay with or not? Because like if they do Dota, right? What is going to be like the what is going to be like the huge like element in terms of what's allowed and what's not in terms of like game houses and stuff, because they're gonna have to start putting a clamp down on like the ways that certain athletes are treated and kind of raised in the sport and stuff. So what is this saying? 2025
So yeah,
next year? Is that
let's
what it's
say
gonna
at
be? When in Saudi
2025.
Arabia?
So it looks.
So that's when the first qualifiers are gonna be, because that's not an Olympic year.
History was no. So I think it's going to be. It's all a separate event. That there's going to be Summer Olympics, Winter Olympics, and Esports Olympics, because the history was made today. This is from July 23rd. History was made today when the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, decided to create Olympic Esports Games. The first edition will be held in 2025 in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The 142nd IOC session in Paris endorsed the proposal by the IOC Executive Board unanimously for the organization of the Games. The IOC has partnered with the National Olympic Committee of Saudi Arabia for 12 years. So, like, this is something that's happening a year from now, and it kind of looks like they're going to have the Summer Games, the Winter Games. I'd call it the Indoor Games, but they're calling it the Esport Games, the Olympic Esports Games.
Yeah, I think calling it the indoor games might come with some weird connotations, like get out of the basement troll connotations that I don't think they want to be bringing
That
to
poor
this level
I
of.
can't believe that newswoman that said that to the about Blue Scooty when he beat Tetris for the first time. Kid needs to get outside, and it's like, kid's making money. He has a career. Imagine if you said that to like a hockey player or a basketball player. You guys need to get outside. You know, because they're indoor sports. Like, that's the joke of it. I was riffing on indoor kids or, like, indoor recess. Did you ever indoor recess? That was the thing I loved to do.
If the weather was bad.
No, like, I was able to, like, play on the computer during recess time.
We definitely, like, because we grew up in New England. If it was like 2 feet of snow outside and they didn't want to lose a kid, we would definitely have like indoor periods of. But generally, no. If it was nice outside and kids were going outside, everybody was going outside, because that was also teachers' break time.
No, they would let me play on the computer, which led to my favorite event was, Devon, did you delete Internet Explorer and then empty the recycle bin? No, I did not do that. But also, if somebody did that, this is how you bring that back. Like, the internet is not gone forever because somebody deleted the shortcut to Internet
the shortcut
Explorer.
icon, yeah. Now, Devon, were they letting everybody choose to sit on the computer, or was this just Devon's special choice?
Well, I mean, let's be honest, I was a bit of a hellraiser around the playground. No, I mean, I think if anyone wanted to, they could. But,
no, so this article that you just sent about the Saudi Arabia stuff, this is really interesting, because this actually does answer the question I was just asking.
Yeah, that's what
in this regard of they are creating their own league to establish this, right? Like, so that'll be wild. So yeah, I want to see. I want to keep an eye on this and see where this goes. But all of this news came out just this month, right? Same month that we had this Nintendo competition game drop.
5 days ago from when we're recording, and I'm trying to do quick math in my head. 5 days, because it came out on July 18th. I had July 19th in my head for some reason. 5 days after the game released digitally and physically is when they made this decision. So. Yeah, if they could have known, that'd have been huge. It is. I don't like that Paris.
Even learning now. Sorry.
Well, I don't like that the Paris logo
why not play
was
it
one
up,
of those
right?
things. Yeah, exactly. Well, but that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about the game itself. The fact that, here's the big thing for me. I was a day off, right? I really thought that it was coming out on the 19th. My plan was wake up, pick up the game, play the game until I saw twisters, come home, play more of the game. Like, that was my day for the 19th. When it came out a day earlier, because I just screwed up, right? And it's totally my fault. Apparently, I'm just making all the scheduling
Because like I think this kind of our first hint of there being something going on with them not doing a great job of letting fans, actual people who want to play, never mind bringing in somebody like me who's like tangentially enough interested that if they really played their cards right, I might buy a copy. You are somebody that was going to buy this no matter what, right? And even you were not really totally informed about what was going on. I think that this is like our first kind of clue that there was maybe some poor marketing maybe going on, if not more.
I almost wonder if the release date in America was initially the 19th. Because, like, I don't know where I would make up that number. Because Twisters was only added to that plan when I realized it was coming out on the day I had taken off for Nintendo World Championships. Mm-hmm. Like, that was the whole thing. But I think by the very nature, the Switch's biggest issue, and I don't know if it's going to be addressed with the Switch 2, the biggest issue with the Nintendo Switch is that games are released at midnight in the territory, in the time zone. So Will, right, let's use William as an example, because he is at the very start of the next day, right? He is 14. Well, he's as close as I think there are living people, right? Because in the middle of the Pacific Ocean is where the day officially starts, and then there's 2 time zones before Will. In Australia, a full day before America gets the games, these games release because of the release day schedule, right? So what people do, right? And I mean, so this might be a good thing. This might be a thing with, like, when they say a release date, we mean that release date internationally, right? It releases on the 19th in Japan, which means the 18th in America. I'm down for that. That would make sense, because what everybody does is they have, I don't do this, I don't think you do this, but what streamers do, because they want the fucking content, is create accounts and localize them in Australia so they can be playing the games 14 hours before they release in America.
Yeah, this is the common thing in across the board in gaming, is that if a game is coming out earlier and people want to be on it, they'll do all sorts of stuff, VPNs and spoofing PlayStations. I remember that was like a big thing back in the day, was like figuring out how to like what do you call it, like break open like PS4s or PS3s even and undo the region locks on them and stuff.
Yeah, I mean PS5, freaking River City Girls 2, when it was delayed in America but released in Japan, that was like when I'm like, well, I'm setting up a Japanese account because I want to play this friggin' game.
Dude, you know the reason that I tried to jailbreak, that was the word I was looking for. I was trying to do a whole move on my PS3, was region locking, not on games, but at the time, like
on Blu-rays and movies.
Movies, right? Like like movies were super region locked, like for about 15, 20 years. Like DVDs were it was stupid that like you could go, and the worst part was, you could go and buy things here in America and not realize, like, it was rare, but like I think the first copy of Spaced I bought, I had to return to the borders I bought it at because it was actually region locked, and I had to go like looking for an American region version of that. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
What I used to do for region locked stuff, because like Mighty Boosh Season 3, before any of them released in America, and that was a whole friggin' issue too, because we went to Best Buy to buy it, and they're like, says it's in the special interest section. We don't have one of those. This is Dale, right? I'm like, you're going to go in, you're going to get it. Because if I go into Best Buy, I'm going to get annoyed at whoever the employee is when they tell me they don't have it, even though I bet the system says that they have it. And that's exactly what happened. Dale went in, she came out, and she's like, so they say they have it, but it's in special interest, and that they don't know where the special interest section is. We don't even have one of those. And then I parked the car. I walked in, walked right to the special interest section, grabbed all 3 seasons, and bought them. I didn't just leave the store. But, like, I know that I used Dale as, like, a sacrificial lamb to talk to a Best Buy employee who I knew would not know the layout of that store. Like, it was, I'm just like... I was like, and I like left the car, And I was like, still kind of mad. Like, I'm like, I didn't have to interact with anybody. I didn't like lose my temper at somebody. But for an employer to say it's in our special interest section, which we don't have, like,
But Best Buy's biggest secret is that there's always one person in the store who knows what you need, but it's never the same person. If you need something from a specific section, you need to find the specific employee that's in charge of that one section, and that guy is usually out back smoking a cigarette.
well, in my case, that guy was me when I worked there. And
Right.
either they never replaced me, because my manager, when I was in the physical media department, which covered music, CDs, and music, games, and DVDs, he did not like me because I knew more than him. So people started to come to me and not to him, and that bothered the fuck out of him. But that's we don't need to tell Best Buy stories. I'm not the completionist. Sorry, that's like that whole Indieland scam that came out about the completionist. The thing that I really locked onto was that, like, I made my Best Buy the biggest Best Buy in the fucking country. Like, okay, no, you didn't, but good lie, smart lie, Gerard. And so that whole thing. Well, when I went to England for the first time, I bought a copy of the Mighty Boosh Series 3 because it was the only one I had never seen. And the way that I broke it was I put it into my computer, ripped all the files, and then burned them to another DVD. I had to do the same thing with the live tour that they've never released over here. But I want to play Pelt the Rabbit in his big white face. Back to video games. Sorry for all the distractions here. So I think it might be that way, where like we're releasing this game that's supposed to be a literal world championship game. The world is supposed to compete. So everybody should be able to compete at the same time.
Well, right, because like so way back to the beginning of this whole thread, the idea that Australia getting the game 24 hours in advance with a game like this with Nintendo, what is the official name of this game?
Nintendo World Championships NES Edition.
Yeah, well, so getting the NES, oh man, Nintendo World Championships, getting that like a day early, right? That gives them 24 hours of time on that game that will never be able to be made up by anyone over here. That's just it's just not going to happen. And that is such a huge gap in this kind of game in this world nowadays. It'd be wild to allow that to exist.
Yes, I agree. So I hopefully think that the fact that it happened the way it happened, everything will be good. That day I went to Target because I love Rhode Island Targets. I'm just going to say this. I don't care that it's a local reference because every Target in Rhode Island is a fucking degenerate. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but there's no reason that Target should be open at 7 a.m., but every Rhode Island Target opens at 7 a.m. To the fact that I have been in other states and like, I'm meeting people at like 8 o'clock, but I have a little bit of time to kill. Why don't I go to the Target? And the Target's
their
like,
pharmacy.
Yeah. What?
It's legit. It's their pharmacy. They have CVS roll-in pharmacy, and their pharmacy needs to be open at a time that CVS deems like, for people to be able to get their meds on the way to work and stuff. That is legitimately the reason why Targets open up as early as they do.
Okay, but I was in Massachusetts, and the Target didn't open until 8 o'clock.
That's because they don't have the same.
They don't have CVS there. CVS is only in Rhode Island.
It's still CVS. No, it's still CVS in Massachusetts. But the hold, we've talked about this before. The like mafia-esque hold that CVS has over the pharmacy ring of Rhode Island is insane. The idea that there is a renowned pharmacy school at University of Rhode Island and it's named after CVS should tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, well, it's true. I don't know. The art school at Rhode Island College is named after Alex and Ani, and I'm pretty sure they went bankrupt. Is that right? I got to check that now.
Wait, Rhode Island College named their arts program after a non-arts related business?
Well, Alex and Ani, they do bracelets.
Yes, they do. They
That's
do, like,
artistic.
make their own drink.
Yeah,
no, I guess that. Well, they did bracelets, to be clear.
No, they are out of bankruptcy. They declared bankruptcy and got a $17.5 million loan. They were declared bankruptcy in 2021.
Man, I remember buying Alex and Ani bracelets at like not flea markets, farmers markets, like way back in the early days in Providence. They would have those like arts markets downtown by RISD. Yeah, shit, man. Anyway,
yeah, so that's
but So Target opened up bright and early for you to go pick up your video
Target,
game.
they opened up at 7, so I go in there and I checked online because they have a very robust app. Target is not a sponsor of this. If they were, it would have been during Target Circle Week. But no, they're not. They're not a sponsor. Sorry, I hated those ads, and I felt so bad for the people who worked at Target because they were playing on all the TVs. Like if I worked at Target, I'd throw a spear through one of those flat screens if I had to hear Kirsten Wiig go Circle Week again. Like I was annoyed as a customer. But back to it. So I go to the electronics department. I speak to an employee, and I'm like, I'm trying to get a game that was supposed to come out today, Nintendo World Championship. And he goes, hold on. And he checks the computer. He's like, yeah, no, I'll go get them for you. And he's like, how many do you want? And I'm like, how many can I get? Because I've told stories on this very show where, like, because it's not a game that had a limit on it, but because they had to go to the back to get the game, they're like, it's one per customer. And I'm like, really? Like, a lot of people are here for Mega Man 11 for a release date? It's just me here. And I got them to... I had Dale come in and she was able to buy one too as a secondary customer. But like that, so that's what I thought was going to happen with Nintendo World Championship. I'm not going to lie. The physical edition that's like special. And also, I'm pretty sure Target still has that crazy deal with Nintendo, right? Like there hasn't been any knowledge about that stopping, right?
Remind me what the deal was.
So it's just like they have a partnership with Nintendo. Because I mean, like the way that games are going, right, as physical media are going, it's difficult to get physical copies of games. That's just a fact. So I'm pretty sure Nintendo and Target teamed up because they understand that their games are people still want physical copies of Nintendo games. So they have the largest section of video games in Target is the Nintendo section. It's a full aisle.
Yeah, I will say the Target's out here. Nintendo is a full aisle. Xbox is a basically full aisle. PlayStation is weird because basically when they couldn't fill it with systems, they started kind of moving in like extra shit like PlayStation like headsets and stuff into that aisle, and then it became all headsets into that aisle. So now PlayStation has like half an aisle and the other half is taken up by all the other video game accessories you could need. But the biggest thing about the Nintendo aisle is that it's not just games, it's also Nintendo merchandise.
Right.
That's where all of the toys, the backpacks, the socks, the like all of that shit is in the Nintendo. Like you go to the Nintendo aisle.
Yeah.
At Target.
It's kind of like a tiny little this is a broad generalization of what it is, but like the Nintendo stores that they have in like New York City and Tokyo, that's meant to be like a little taste of what a Nintendo store would be like.
Right. Yeah.
Like how they have the FAO shorts section in toys.
Yeah, I think ours for a while had like a poster section and stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, but they also do stuff with Nintendo. Like, remember when all the red balls became Kirby? Like they had like little things that they could put over them to make it Kirby. Yeah. They've had Mario and Luigi, things like that. I don't know if your Target still has this. I don't know how Targets differ. I've never worked at a Target, so I don't have any of the inside scoop there. But they have Mario on a flagpole, like prominently displayed as like a call to the Nintendo section of electronics.
Oh, like in store, like one of those like what are they called? But I know.
Yeah, but it's like not like it's like a full on statue.
Yes,
like
statue.
it's not like a cardboard cutter that like it's like a nice artistic piece that's up
we
there.
Actually we have a couple of different cool ones. We back when Mutant Mayhem was coming out last year, they had put up one of the turtles because they had a whole turtles like and
they had to deal with Playmates too. The only place to get the turtle tots and all like the re-release stuff was Target.
Yeah,
Target they're good at that.
We had a Luigi. We had a Luigi for a while in the Nintendo section, but that has since moved because they've put in another display. They've actually added another playable display because there's always kids. That's the other big thing. Is out here, every family has 5 kids and mom's bringing them to do the grocery shopping. Like that is just common existence out here. And so also every department store that has like a toy section or an electronics section or something like that, it is kid central. Like it is still like going to Toys R Us like back in like the 90s. Like I spent so much time in Toledo, Ohio, where let's just say that prospects were grim. Right? Like you would go into stores and it would be like tumbleweeds through, like packs of wolves running through. So to move to Utah and see that, like, no, people still act like it's 20 years ago and everything's fine financially and retail wise. Like, it's really hard because I know that like retail has been suffering for the last like 2 decades, but I just don't see it out here. But
Yeah,
yeah, so they straight up needed to add another display because like it was just impossible. So depending on the day of the week, that like to get in and actually demo anything or try anything, that's still just a big thing kids do out here.
that's hilarious to me because that's how I still treat the sections. Like that's why I like to go at like 7 a.m, where like
Hmm.
kids are at school, so I know
Yeah.
that it's not going to be all you're really running into are the Hot Wheels guys, and I love the Hot Wheels guys. I have such respect for the Hot Wheels
I
guys.
don't understand how kids go to school out here because I like to try and plan like you just said, and it doesn't work. There's still groups of kids all the friggin' time. As far as I can tell, they just aren't required to go to school out here. I don't know.
I don't know. I used to go when the Walmart was right next to the high school. There were times where we would go to Walmart and then I'd get dropped off at school. So like I'd be in Walmart at like 6 o'clock. I don't know. It's crazy. It's just this insane thing that happens.
So
But
how
yeah,
many copies of Nintendo World Champions do they let you buy?
they let me buy. They said I could buy as many as I wanted, but I only bought 2. Right. This is the whole reason behind this story, is because I was back in that Target and I saw he's like we only got 4 of them. The other 2 are still available and on the shelf. Like so, not only is it one of those situations where they had this like I don't think anybody knows that it released.
What's the
Like
price point on it?
so
Is
the
it
collector's edition is $60. But if you
okay?
download it digitally, it's $30. You're paying $30 for a set of 5 pins, 16 art cards, and a recreation gold cartridge. And a
Right,
physical
yeah.
copy of the game. Which is I think the biggest deal of all is the fact
Yeah.
that like you can put it into other systems. We already touched on this, right?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot going on here that I think is really working against the game in so many ways. Not only do I feel like they have not made a huge deal out of it, they haven't marketed it really anywhere that I have seen. And then, like, on top of that, they've got this really weird concept that, like, you can get the game at home from the comfort of your home in a proven way that we know most people want to experience media now digitally without having to go to the store and talk to other humans for half the price. What is the incentive to go out and buy this other than, being like a super fan, being a collector, being his, somebody in that field? And like what that's just not audiences anymore. That hasn't been audiences for 5 6 years. Like 10 years ago, yeah, it was kind of this thing where everybody kind of thought it was cool or fun to jump in on like a certain type of collecting, a certain, I mean, the pops became huge, right? Now there's freaking landfills
Landfills.
full of them
Yep.
because nobody's doing that anymore. Nobody has the cash to waste. So it's a wild miscalculation on like what audiences would actually want.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I just wasn't expecting it. Like I bring up Mega Man 11 because it was something that I bought at Target and they had like we got 3 copies in, which is insane, right? For like the physical edition of a friggin' Mega Man game, for one of the only places where you can still buy physical copies of video games, for them to be like, yeah, we got 3 copies and it's 1 per customer. So like,
Hmm.
okay, thank you. Like, and it's like, and that was the thing. Like the whole 1 per customer of it all was because of exactly what you're talking about. People would go in and buy everything. So
Right.
then they had to combat it with that. And that was, God, like that was like 2018, right? That was so long ago that Mega Man 11 came out. I'm actually going to look up exactly when Mega Man 11 came out because I want to make sure that I'm as angry as I should be. Yeah, it was 2018. It was October 2nd, 2018. So yeah, through the pandemic and now most people get stuff online or bots, right? Like it's still a huge deal to like scalp. Retail has just been sort of removed from that process.
Mm.
Like and it's strange. But what I want to talk about, right? So this is already a game that felt like everything was kind of working against it. The first Nintendo World Championship event ended, right? They go from Monday to Sunday. I think they start at 7 a.m. They might start at 6 a.m. Every week they start a new world championship event. And it is 5 of the challenges that you compete in. And everybody thought that that meant it was going to be your 5 scores added together and then results would be given. But then the first world championship ended, and these are the pictures that I sent to you. Because no, it's just your world ranking based upon whoever decided to compete in it. So it's not one of these things that's going to force you to play all the challenges and get good at the challenges in order to compete. You're literally just this challenge on the global scale.
Yeah.
And that seems, I don't know.
I mean, but doesn't it? But it seems like though that does leave the door open for them to do events where they can come in and say, okay, for like the next month we're going to be running a championship run or something, right? Like there's nothing stopping them from doing that if they want to. It's just that right now that's just not how they're taking the rankings. Or do you feel like the game's not built to do that?
So I mean, I've played multiplayer live with some people. That does have like chunks of challenges that are all put together. You can do packs or you can do individual challenges and choose your own. There is the legendary challenge, which is the 13 legendary tasks in order as a speed run. And those are cool, right? So those exist. But it was one of those things where like it's not really a world championship. So like if you look at the first photo that I sent you, right? Competition number 1, world championships. It was the Mush Zoom challenge, which is collect the first mushroom in 1-1. I tied with a bunch of people at doing that in 4 seconds and 6 hundredths of a second, right? Because I don't think I don't think you use frames on this one like they tend to do in speedrunning. So that tied me as the 7,667th person in the world, in the top 14% of people who competed in that challenge. And then then they do the birth year ranking is cool. I think that's interesting. That of the other people born in 1986 who competed, I was the 385th out of 2,517. Like, that's cool to me. I'm not going to lie. I like that they can do that. But I honestly thought that it was going to be the aggregate of these 5 challenges, and that was going to determine your world ranking. Like, it's weird that, like, I mean, I'm not the only one who's disappointed by that. Like, people saw that, and they're like...
It is definitely... I mean, it's unexpected. It's unclear why you wouldn't do it the other way and all of that. What's wild is that they're giving you all of the tools for the community to kind of put together their own kind of system to do this, right? And in any other developer, any other publisher, I would say, like, yeah, they're encouraging speed running, but they don't want to put in that effort in order to like to be the ones to have to monitor and be the authority on it and all of that stuff, right? The problem with that with Nintendo is that they are so against letting anything flourish in the community that they don't have control over. If they want people to be able to use this information to do the kind of stuff that you're talking about and not be the ones to provide it, like the fear of you couldn't just have a no-name group decide to have their own championship competition for a week. You get because Nintendo would come in and squash it in a second. So they don't want the community to create their own versions of this, but then they also don't want to provide it themselves. And it's it's a head scratcher. I don't understand why they wouldn't give you this kind of stuff. Why these numbers, these kinds of rankings.
That's the exact thing. Is that so now, right? Now that people understand that this is how they're running, like one of the current challenges is to clear the first level of Kid Icarus. Not really the first level, to get out of the underworld. 1-1 technically in Kid Icarus. I don't think a lot of people understand how Kid Icarus works. Like, how far would you say you've played in Kid Icarus, Sejohn?
I have played Kid Icarus. Kid Icarus is one of those games that they constantly throw into collections, and I don't mean just Nintendo. I mean even like ROM hacks and hackers and shit like that. Like when they put stuff out, they're always like, oh yeah, and now you can play Kid Icarus, but as Sonic and like weird shit like that. Like, so I constantly play Kid Icarus in that regard because people keep making me. I have never put any actual effort into that game and really don't know fuck all about the concept of actual Kid Icarus. And so it's like it's one of those things that like I am fully aware because the culture has made me aware, and I have never made any effort to go beyond that knowledge.
The first level of Kid Icarus is not all that Kid Icarus is. That's the nicest thing that I can say, like without like going crazy about Kid Icarus. Like the first level, it's a vertical climb. It's really strange, but then eventually you get into like Zelda-esque dungeons where you have to explore and find items to power up Pit and all of that stuff. Like,
Didn't they release like a newer Kid Icarus like when the Switch came out or something?
There was a Kid Icarus on 3DS.
3DS, is that what it was? Yeah, I remember one of the more recent systems had like a really big like we're gonna put out a new Kid Icarus game that I then never heard anything else about.
Well, because it came with its own special like controller thing that you inserted the system into, because the game was like not built for a 3DS. Like it's a shooter essentially, and that's fine. Like I'm not mad that you'd make Kid Icarus a shooter, because like the final level of Kid Icarus is a for real like shmup, the sideways kind of shmups, like an R-Type or that, but I think they still call them shmups. A scrolling shooter, right? Like it works. Like that level is awesome, and it's all about how you've done in the levels leading up to it to make sure that Pit is strong enough to actually succeed against that challenge.
Right.
Like
right,
it's
right.
like Kid Icarus is really fun. I really enjoy the game, but the fact that like you don't have to play that in order to qualify to be judged in the World Championship. There are going to be people who don't play that game. And then like even looking at the results screen, if we go to like, what's it? Up and Out, the one for Metroid, that was 43,000 players overall, but 49,000 for the Zelda one, 56,000 for Super Mario Brothers, 50,000 for another Super Mario Brothers. And then you come to, wow, is that even less? Yeah, it is. Super Mario Brothers 2 as Luigi, pick up the key in 1-2, 40,000 people played that game, right? And again, granted, like, it was a master level challenge, right? It's a red challenge, which again, I've been saying beginner.
Wait, where are you seeing 40,000? Because I'm seeing total players 1,972.
Those are people who were born in 1986.
Oh, that's the birth year ranking.
Yeah.
I see it.
The one before it is how many is there. So like that, like those numbers are just going to go down now that we know for a fact you don't need to compete in everything. Like if it's an Excite Bike, I might not do an Excite Bike. Like yesterday when I woke up, I made sure I got an S rank and everything. And that's all I'm shooting for. I don't want to be one of these people. Like I've seen streamers who are like, I'm going to get this down to the lowest possible time that is possible. And like, that's fine. But I'm not interested in that. I also don't really love the reveal.
They're also farming content.
They're farming for content.
There's part of that is them being tryhards. Part of that is them also needing to be doing something.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I understand that. It's not, but I'm not going to do that. Even if I were a streamer, I'd be like, we got the S, now we're moving forward.
I do want to make it clear. When I say farming content, I'm not using that derogatorily. Like they have to create content somehow. So like that's
right.
That's what
so
they're
and
doing
it's a
there,
thing
right?
that they're going to be doing anyway. And if people like it, that's what you're going to keep doing. I agree. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then this reveal that like there's a secret pin, because there's a pin for getting A rank on all challenges. If you do get S rank on all challenges, that pin turns into an S instead of an A. And it says got S rank in all challenges. Like, I'm not interested in that. Because some of the challenges, I'm just going to say it, are fucking Excite Bike and Ice Climber and friggin' Balloon Fight. And I don't care about those games. I care enough,
fight, man. Not even some balloon fight.
Give me Joust any day, right?
Oh,
at least Joust controls well. Balloon
I saw a balloon fight cabinet somewhere maybe it was something that somebody had custom made, because I can't, I've never seen one in the wild. I was definitely looking at it in photos online, and so because of that I can't tell you if it was like a legitimate like official one or not. But I saw a balloon balloon fight cabinet, and I thought, you know what, that'd be fucking rad.
Versus balloon fight. It is real. There is a balloon fight cabinet.
Yeah.
Arcade game developed by SRD Corporation, published by Nintendo as part of their Versus Dual System arcade system.
Yeah. But like, imagine that being at a pizza place. You get yourself a big old like Pepsi in one of those red plastic glasses, and like you just standing there and popping quarters into balloon fight for an hour. Yeah, man.
I mean, some of those Versus games are great. Like, I've played Versus Castlevania. That's a blast. And Versus Super Mario Brothers, come to find out, is the reason that the lost levels exist. Because for that game, they're like, Super Mario Brothers, I don't know how much you know about Super Mario Brothers. After the fifth world, it starts to repeat levels.
Right.
Like 5-3 is just 1-3 with bullet bills.
Right. They add, they don't just repeat levels. They do add new elements to them. But yes,
right.
Yeah.
But because of that, they're like, well, if we're gonna do this as an arcade game, it should be new levels for everything. We don't want to have any repeat levels. So they developed 6 new levels for Versus Super Mario Brothers. And those are what led they were having so much fun that Shigeru Miyamoto's like, let's make a whole new game, but like this level of difficulty.
Yeah.
And then that's because someone was like,
I wonder if that's also why, that must also explain a little bit about some of the graphical changes. Upgrades is the right word, but I don't necessarily love the Lost Levels look over some of the original stuff. But there is definitely a slight graphical difference between them, and I wonder if part of that is because they were also designing for different styles of chips and stuff for like arcade cabinets versus home systems. That's interesting. I had no idea that it was related to the
specifically the stuff that is different in Lost Levels, like the tile sets and everything. It's one of the reasons why they didn't release it. They say that it was too difficult for America, right? Thanks, Howard. I can't think of Howard's last name right now, but maybe Howard Jones. But like that Howard guy that was like...
Eat duck?
No, I wish it were Howard the Duck. Yeah, you can look him up while I talk about him. But he was like the guy in America who tested all the Nintendo games and like determined if they should come to America or not, if they'd be too difficult for people. Like a lot of the changes that were made to The Legend of Zelda came from him playing through the Japanese version and then
Howard
giving
Phillips,
Howard Phillips, thank you. And giving notes on like this might be too confusing for American audiences because you're referencing Japanese like folklore in this.
His literal like job title at Nintendo was American consultant. He was the consultant for Nintendo on whether or not America would be down to clown or not. And like, thanks a lot, man. You shaped this dude shaped so many people's lives. Because he was like, I don't know, I had a bad day and couldn't get through this game, so I deem it too hard.
He has a quote about it that is just fantastic. I'm trying to think. I wish I could find his quote about Super Mario Brothers 2. But he's just like, it made me hate video games. Like, he was so mad at it. I just absolutely love it. So like in addition to the whole people will hate this game, the original thing like was people will just think it's the first game if you don't visually change something. So that's why like the bricks are different.
Yeah, there's like a little bit of like bubbliness to everything.
Yeah.
Everything's
like
a little
rounded
more rounded
out.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that comes from like the fact that Nintendo's like, well, people are gonna think it's the same game, and they're like, no, we tell them it's Super Mario Brothers 2. Yeah, but if it looks the same, people aren't gonna think there's a difference. Oh, well, when they play it, they're gonna know there's a difference because they're gonna get to level 2 and they're gonna want to rip their skulls off. Like, I am so glad that like last year, because of the writer's strike and because of the Screen Actors Guild strike, like, oh man, I'm like starved for content. I guess I'll turn to video games. Oh, I guess it's finally time to learn how to play Super Mario Brothers 2 Japanese. Because like I'm so happy to like have had the experience with it.
We once asked the question on this show, like why do like Mario hackers really love like the Kaizu concept, and it's because Nintendo themselves pretty much introduced it.
Right, in that game. And it's
Yeah.
like, that game's such a bastard. And it was like one of the first things I did, because there are a bunch of challenges from lost levels in Nintendo World Championship. And the second to last one, right? Not the legend one, just the second to last challenge is to clear world level, what is it? Blah, sorry. 8-2. The one where you have to find a vine in order to get to the castle. Otherwise, the level just keeps looping. And I'm like, that's just mean. I love it. I love that this is it. I think the legend one is to clear 9-1, which is a level that, like, even if you've beat lost levels before, you may have never gotten to 9-1 because you have to do it. You have to clear every level. You can't use any warp zones or anything like that. So, you know, you want to be a bastard about it.
Yeah, Nintendo, man, it's such a cool concept, and the potential for Nintendo to improve the game a little bit with a couple of different like meta pushes of like, hey, we're gonna do event competitions, we're gonna stay on top of this, but that would depend on Nintendo taking care of a game after it's released, and that's also just not something they normally do, you know?
Right.
Like, we've seen some really cool stuff in Mario Kart, we've seen some really cool stuff in the Mario Maker series of them kind of sticking with certain games, but in general, we don't often hear about Nintendo really propping up games that they don't have much interest in. And it really feels like they don't have much interest in this game now that it's out.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, if the World Championships felt like compete in these 5 events and then be judged based on how you did on all 5 of them, like, that's not even a screen that's available. But it should be something that they add, right? Like, overall, so that you can see how you did overall in all 5. Like, yes, I could add up all of my percentages and see where I placed overall for that competition. But I think it would be cool that, like, if it were like an actual competition, because there is no online multiplayer at all. The survival mode, which is something else that I absolutely love. I'm so excited for the next survival mode stuff to come out. They come out every Monday as well. I'm excited to do it. But all you're competing against are ghosts of people who've competed in those games.
Yeah.
So then, like, and that sucks on a level too, because this person who had a, like, 100% perfect run on a challenge, they're always going to have that run. That's always what you're going to be competing against if you come up against that person's ghost. Like, there's no room for human error because you're literally playing against a recording.
Yeah.
Right? So the fact that, that's not really online, right? You're competing against uploaded ghosts that people have submitted. And you don't choose to, you just opt in if your stuff is submitted to Nintendo or not. And that's how you compete in the survival games. So the fact that there is no online mode, that's disappointing, but it also feels very Nintendo. Like, we don't want you to have online competitions with this, right? We're in control of that. So you can play up to 8 people on one system. That might be fine and fun live in person for events, right? But, like, it has to be in person. And then you have to have 8 controllers. And then you have to have 8 people who are willing to compete. Right?
Exactly. There's arbitrary limits that are then now put in place, so Nintendo still gets to really control that ecosystem, right? And also make a bunch of cash off of that, because in all of that, also everybody has to buy in certain ways.
Yeah. And then the last one is, and it's a $30 game. So as a $30 game, I understand why it's not there. But they could have charged $60 for this game if included with the game worth the 13 games. The fact that you don't get the games, but only the challenges ripped from the games, that's crazy too. Because if they could have done the exact same stuff they do, and then it's them keeping the records and being in control of records, right?
Especially because they're propping this thing up as this, like, piece of history that they're, like, preserving in this way by creating this and keeping the love going and all of that, to not also then include the games that it's based on really kind of flies in the face of that idea, right? Like, even if I, as a collector, somebody who's not necessarily good at games but does like the idea of preservation and does like the idea of having this kind of media, like, I've completely lost interest in buying this product now because it doesn't even really have the history attached to it that you want.
Exactly. It's so, like, every misstep they could have taken feels like it was taken with this. Because the game should be included, right? Oh, so maybe some people cancel their Nintendo Switch Online. Well, they can't, because you still need Nintendo Switch Online to play the game online. Yeah. So they'd still need that. It's not like, oh, well, we give them 13 games that are also available on Nintendo Switch Online. Yeah, but now they're on the cartridge. And the reason why that is bothersome to me, right? Then there's one other thing, then we'll touch on that as well. The original Nintendo World Championship cart, right? The one that in 1990 everybody competed on and winners got to win a copy of, right? That had the full Super Mario Brothers game in it. They didn't like only put in the first couple, like the first world for the collect 50 coins challenge that was in Super Mario Brothers. It was easier for them to put in the entire game and then put in arbitrary code that once you've collected 15 coins, it'll jump over to Rad Racer, where it has all of Rad Racer in it. And then it has all of Tetris in it. Like, that had more in it than what this game has.
Yeah,
and that was made 34 years ago. And the only reason that we know that for a fact is that Shigeru Miyamoto said that the fastest way to max out the score would be to get to level 3-1 and do the ultimate 1-up trick. And then as like once you get to like 5 minutes left in the timer, collect your 50th coin and you'll still have time to do the other two things. But the way that the game is structured, since there's no extra lives in it, you'll just get 8,000 points every time you would have gotten a 1-up. So, like, so there's that. And then the final thing, and I might have touched on this, but it still bothers me, is the fact that, like, one of the third one that I sent to you was what, 1-1-1-on-1? No, 1-on-1-1, right? Okay. That's the one that I got 10,000th in the world, 10,756 in the world. While you're doing that run of 1-1, if you go down the fourth pipe, which, like, that's how you do 1-1 fast, it kicks you back out, like it rewinds you back to before the pipe and then says on the screen, can't go that way. Like, okay. Why wouldn't you tell us that, right? Like, it's because it's just complete level 1-1 in Super Mario Brothers. It doesn't say without warps. It doesn't say like it's like, and it's funny the first time, right? And then funny is relative, right? But you talk about Kaizo stuff, right? You talk about trolling. Like, that's right. Nintendo trolling people who are familiar with this game, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's just like, it's funny the first time, but then, like, if I'm in a competition and I see someone do something that, like, normally you would do to go fast and then get yelled at by Nintendo that's not allowed, like, I feel a little bad. That, like, oh, I'm going to beat this person, but because they didn't know that when their Ghost was recorded.
It feels cheap.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it just feels cheap. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. So the whole thing, I mean, I'm still going to play it, right? I'm going to try to get all of the pins. I think currently the only pin that I still need is win 3 silver survival and win 3 gold survival. And then the complete everything on S-rank pin. I don't give a fuck about that one. You want that to be a pin that's in my pin collection? You make me look at the fact that I haven't unlocked it every time. The fact that I can look at my pin collection and all of them are illuminated, that's enough for me. Right?
Yeah, it's interesting that they chose to go with just doing a reskin of the sprite when you get the S rank instead, because, like, that would imply that we want you to see other players who have this thing that you don't and be like, how did they get that? Find out how they got it. Challenge that. Except then everything you've said about how they kind of really kind of dissuade you from actually paying attention to what anybody else in the world is doing.
Right? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
So like,
yeah,
yeah,
it's an
you're never gonna have
evolution.
that FOMO because you're just not into
Nope,
that
nope. My,
level
my
of.
pin collection looks complete. Well, you don't have the S rank pin, but it doesn't show me that I don't have the S rank pin. Why would they evolve the get all A rank pin to be the S rank pin? Maybe I just want to show off that I got all A rank and not that I got the S rank. I don't know. Like it's
It's wild choices.
The wildest choice, though, the
game.
wildest choice is that every published by Nintendo, so every licensed Nintendo game, is in a list for you to choose your favorite NES game, so you can display it on your profile. Like, that is the craziest thing, because like Ren and Stimpy in Buckaroos is written in this Nintendo game. Like, okay, I mean, that's like, I originally said I can't pick, but because I figured I would only get to choose from like the 13 titles that were in the game, not literally all 723 licensed and released through Nintendo games would be an
Goof
option.
Troop? They don't got
Goof Troop is Super Nintendo.
That's right, Super Nintendo, right? It wouldn't be in this list, right?
Yeah,
right,
exactly. When Nintendo World Championships SNES Edition releases, they'll have Goof Troop in there based upon this. I don't know if they will. I don't know if they'll ever do that. I think they'd be a little foolish not to. But also, this is me looking at you, Sejohn, even though we're talking to each other through a digital medium. I don't think I would buy it. I'm just going to say that.
So that was
like,
going to be my final
up.
kind of question here on this whole thing is, do you have any idea how this game is actually doing? Because as much as we're sitting here bashing it, we are not the bastion of like, like we have hated many a thing that the world has often bought in on, and we have also very much bought in on things that the world has often left behind. So like, I have no idea after all of this if this game is even really doing well or not. For all I know, it's the top seller.
Right, that's a very good question. Total units sold on the Japanese charts, 27,391.
Is that a lot? Now my
well,
next
it's
question.
only
What is the...
So, Powerful Pro Baseball 2024-2025 sold 166,947 sales between the 15th and 21st of July. Powerful Pro Baseball 2024-25 on the PS4, go fuck yourself, PS5, sold 49,210. And then, so the third best seller is Nintendo World Championships NES Edition, and that is with 27,391.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't... Yeah, that's it.
I mean, there's been a lot of stuff with like the video game sales stuff recently that's come out. I mean, this week we heard about Humble Games completely shutting down because they just have not been able to sell, even though despite the fact that they have had numerous critical darlings over the last couple of years. I mean, Slay the Spire and Unpacking was their more recent one, right? But like, they just completely shuttered because like they just were like, we can't keep the games development side going. They're going to keep doing the Humble packages and stuff and still running the Humble store, but like in terms of game development, Humble Games just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, I was going to make sure it's their game studio that's shutting down, because I saw that and was like, but they're still going to offer games, right? Because games for charity, that's huge for people. Like they've done a lot of good with that. But
yeah, and they were using the Humble Games to kind of carry that on, and that like a lot of the profit for that stuff was feeding back into the charity. But you know, like nonprofits in general in this country are just always on a freaking razor's edge, and then like add to that the volatility of the video games market. I'm surprised they were able to do as much as they did. Like I think it's cool what they did, but yeah, so like that kind of like shook a lot of people this week, and like people talking about like indie game development and how as much as indie games have kind of come in to save the gaming market in terms of consumer side, as far as development side goes, like they're still treated like awfully. They, like financially, they're not surviving. People are making these games that are going out to 100 million players and barely making enough money to pay for the game that was made, never mind then developing the next thing they want to do, right? And so like it's great that a game can come out, sell well, and you can support the people that made it. Part of the problem in this industry is that we need to be able to support people enough for them to then keep going. Otherwise, like there's no innovation, there's no moving forward, there's nothing to play next, right? And like balancing those kinds of things out as a consumer, like it's hard to kind of get on board with the idea that like, yeah, this indie game, probably is worth about 15 bucks, but I'm willing to play 20 because I want to see what else this developer can do. Like there are some of us that say that, but in general, that's not how it works. People don't want to pay more for a thing than it looks like it's worth just because potentially the person that made it might get to do something more. That's not usually part of the math for people, right?
I mean, it's
I
not
don't blame
part of the
them.
math for people. People are so upset that like it's $15 for a game and then I can finish it in like 3 hours. That's not worth it. And it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, like,
what
yeah, the right, right, exactly. It's like that time alone is not a factor here, people, but yeah. Yeah, so the gaming industry across the board is just in this really weird place and has for years now and like can't seem to find its footing. Like people are in and out of this industry like left and right. I have no idea what the video game landscape is going to look like in the next 5 years.
Neither do video games, right? Like honestly, we are at a place where consoles should probably be done. Right? Like everything can play everything right now. Right? It's so weird, right? Like
Yeah.
the Nintendo Switch stuff that we were talking about the fact that games are available like a day before in Australia. Like so I can get that game, right? I can, if I want to, I can emulate that game. That's why something like Yuzu was such a big problem for Nintendo, because it is current day stuff that is being emulated. And part of the reason why it's being emulated is because, and this is no offense to Nintendo, but a lot of their choices are anti-consumer, right?
Yeah.
Like the fact that their system, games are made for their system to only run on their systems, but they can run so much better than the system allows them to.
Right.
That's insane to me. That like, it's the limitations of the system. It's one of the reasons why like the Steam Deck, because it's basically got the same, like Nintendo was smart to tap into Steam's library to make sure that they were offering a huge library of games to their customer base. That was a good thing. But then Steam was like, well, we're just going to release one that can actually run everything though. Right? Like
Yeah.
that's the...
Yeah, for $400 more, but yes, yeah.
Well, I mean, is it $400 more?
It's $650, I think.
No,
For
but like I think a
top-end.
base Steam Deck is $400. Like for the
Yeah, but a base Steam Deck noticeably also does not have the kind of power that you're talking about. Like the Steam Deck that can play everything is the much higher end Steam Deck with like the OLED screen and stuff. Like if we're gonna talk about it, like the reason to buy a Steam Deck is exactly what you're saying, is that you have top of the line now and it can play everything right now and will for the next few years be able to continue to say that it can play anything, right? But like all consoles, it will have a lifespan on it at some point. You can do a little bit more upgrading with the Steam Deck than you can with other systems, but other than that, right? But if you want everything that they're promising, you have to look at the high-end model. And I would say the same thing for Nintendo, is that I wouldn't look at a Switch Lite and talk about what the Switch can do, right? I would talk about the latest high-end, top-end model from Switch. And I think right now there's at least a $300 to $400 difference between the two of those.
Yeah, so I mean the 1 terabyte Steam Deck, the big difference there is that you do get like you have an OLED screen and you have a terabyte of storage. It doesn't have anything else different under the hood. Underneath, it has better Wi-Fi. It has Wi-Fi 6E, where the LCD 6 gigabyte is only Wi-Fi 5. But like they should be able to play everything the same. It's just gonna look better on the OLED.
Again, you could say the same thing about the Switch Lite and the Switch OLED as well. Yes. So yeah.
But it's one of those situations where like for $100 more than a Switch OLED, you can get a Steam Deck that is more powerful, and not more powerful just by $100. And anything that's deck verified can be played on it.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to play non-deck verified things, then yes, you should be on the OLED thing, because...
Well, if you really want to talk about like the market as well, we also would be remiss to not point out that also Steam is more than willing to sell you well taken care of, well repaired, refurbished Steam Decks for cheaper, right?
Yeah,
and like
that's also
going through I don't really know if there's a way to go through Nintendo and get like a cheap Switch that's just been refurbished, right? I could maybe go to like Best Buy and do that, but that's not the same as going directly to Nintendo to purchase it.
Yeah, a certified refurbished 64 gigabyte LCD Steam Deck is $279.
Yes.
And then you, the consumer, right? You can't do this really with a Nintendo. Yes, you can put an SD card into both of them, but also you could open up your Steam Deck and drop in a bigger hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
That is like, because it's essentially just a computer, but it is one that they are verifying when games can or cannot be played on them. So you have that like same sort of gold standard that a console is supposed to have, right? I mean, look at everything that's happened with like Cyberpunk and the way that it ran on PS4, but that got the stamp of approval from Sony to be released on the PS4. So like even that doesn't mean what it used to, right? The idea of a game console is for people, just being honest about it, who are too stupid to be maintaining a computer. You buy this thing, it's able to run everything for 3 to 5 years, and then you buy the next one, and it's able to do the same thing. And also,
you jerk.
What?
Too stupid. You're an ass.
No, but that is their argument. Console makers have
I don't
said
think they would use the concept of stupid. Let me just put it that way. But anyway, that's not the point.
Right. But it is. It's for people who like, I just want to buy a thing and have that thing work. I don't want to have to test. I don't want to have to figure out what's wrong with it.
I mean, for instance, like, I am definitely one of those people. I don't love the idea of PC gaming because I don't want to have to stay on top of that stuff. And it's not because I don't believe in the idea that I have the ability to. I don't want to. like I am as the person that gets to spend the money, I get to say that, hey, you know what a limit of mine is? I don't want to think about this. I want to buy it and not have to think about it when I go and then buy the game next to it. Whereas like with a PC, I can buy a computer, come home, set it all up, put Steam on, and then I still have to do a bunch of research to figure out which games are actually going to do what I want them to do on my system and what settings I need to put in place. Whereas if I go and I buy a Switch, if I go and buy a PlayStation, if I go and buy an Xbox, I can literally walk into the store, pick up the console, pick up any game next to it, and I will be 100 rest assured this will work when I get it home. I don't have to think about it. There's no thought. There's no research. There's nothing else I have to do. This is a PS5. That says PS5 on it. Bang, bang, boom. Let's go home and play some video games. Like, now, you know, I know that there's other elements to that of like, hey, the system needs to update for 2 days, and yeah, the game needs to install for the rest of the day. So, like, obviously, there's also that kind of bullshit. But in the moment of purchase versus a PC versus a console, that is definitely part of the math for me.
And I get that. I do understand that, but it has gotten to a point where like console exclusivity, like everything.
Well, what you're saying
outdated.
is that guarantee that I'm talking about doesn't exist anymore, right?
Yeah.
You can still buy a PS5, bring it home, put in a video game, and hey, this video game is fucking borked.
Yeah, this game does not work yet. You have to download these patches, this game worked when it released, but we've had, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, right? My favorite game to reference because I got to play it early. They did their final patch like a couple of months, like I think last month. And in that final patch, they're like, this is going to be our final patch. We're not doing any more work on the game. They introduced a game-breaking bug that anybody could get. It is just the fact that the game will randomly freeze when you're in the shop. And if it does that, you cannot continue. It deletes, like, it is bad. It is something that, like, should not have happened, and for it to happen in their final patch is really just an embarrassment for that company. And of course they say that, but then like within 2 weeks they announced DLC. So one would hope that once that DLC is installed, that is also repaired, right? Because people have not been quiet about it. It's speedrunners who have noticed. Yeah.
But they cannot tie the two together because, God, if they were like, hey, we broke our game on the last patch and you have to buy the DLC to fix it, that won't fly either, right?
Yeah, but usually when there's a DLC drop, there's also an update to the game.
Yes, or what other people might think of as a patch. So it can't possibly be the last.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. It's weird. It's just but like that's the big one that like most recently, because it was people who were speedrunning the game and they'd go in like, and you only have to go to the shop 3 times in the speedrun for that game. And it's like, let's see if the game decides randomly to freeze and destroy.
Oh, it's a whole new element of intrigue.
Of RNG, man. Right? People will be on the edge of their seats. Also, since we started this thing...
Are people speedrunning to the bug? Like, that's going to be the true, like, speedrun until the bug hits?
I'm sure. I mean, I only watch one person who plays the game. That's what called it to my attention. But then I'm like, is this just a problem for him? Because he was making a big deal out of it. And it is a big deal, right? Based upon the rules for the game, if you stop at any point, then your run is over. Right? So like if you had to reset, you have to start from the beginning for the speed run. But then also like the nature of the bug is the fact that even a casual player would lose any progress up to that point. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure like that is the thing. People do speed runs to the bug and all of that. But then to see other people like, yeah, this is awful. Like this is completely ruining the game. And it's supposed to be the final patch. This is supposed to be games are never done anymore. Right.
Well, and I don't think anybody that like I'm only half joking when I bet that there are people speed running to the bug. I bet there are, but like even I don't think would be disappointed if the game then came around and fixed itself. Like,
right.
Like, they're only doing that because of the irony, because of like the laugh or you'll cry attitude of like we've got to do something with this.
Well, it's also a good way. If it's a really good way to bring attention to a bug, right? Mm-hmm. Like that. So if you want freaking Inti Creates to take notice of the fact that this game has a game-breaking bug, you take your entire speedrun community and you have everybody do a speedrun to the bug run, and then you show that there's this whole big leaderboard of people who've done it. And you see
cutting that bug,
like and then you have like a thing like, hey, this is how big a deal it is, right? That like we've all identified this bug. Not only have we identified the bug, we've figured out how to make it happen. And here's the evidence of 300 or so people who have had this happen to them.
As somebody that works on the other side of this in the tech industry, like this, essentially they're providing the case study, right? The evidence that you would need. You know, if you ever call in, anybody that's ever called into an IT that needed like some help, they always ask you to provide 2 to 3 examples of it happening so that they can start tracking it down. Well, here we've got an entire board of 100 people.
Here's a board with video evidence, everything that happened up to it happening.
Literally like, input layering over it so you know exactly what they were pressing, like everything you would need.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what we've identified the problem for you. You just got to go in and fix the code. Right?
Which is, sit back in your armchair now and smoke a pipe while you just have to go in and fix it now.
Right, exactly. And I understand that that's not it, but I mean, think about like if 300 people had sped, and I don't know if they've done that, but I've known that for other things, right? That's a thing in retro gaming where like speed run to this error. Like that's a category in some games.
I mean, like that's some might say the oldest category in this because like speed running to the screen in Donkey Kong. What's it called? The
kill screen.
The kill screen, right?
Yeah.
Like literally, this game can't process the any further. Is like one of the oldest competitions in video games.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's a thing. Like anything that can be done and be considered a complete state, there's probably a speed run to. So it's out there if it is. But that's the thing. Like games now are never really done. But then when a company says this is our final thing, you better be hoping that it's in a final workable state, that they didn't introduce some other issue, right? It is said the video game industry right now is so crazy for that. And like NES World Championship, right? On some level, it'd be like, wouldn't it be great if they introduced different games with different challenges? It has an online mode, right? It has a thing where it's connected to the internet, but they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that for free, certainly. Yeah. They're going to charge you for that as DLC. Or, like, if they were going to do it for free, then they would have already mentioned it.
Well, and doing it for free doesn't exclude it from drama either, because exactly. I mean, like in all of this stuff, you know, one of the ones that I'm always paying attention to is Stardew, right? And like all of that has had its share of this is the final update information from Concerned Ape there, right? And like and to the point where then now we're waiting on the 1.6 patch for consoles, right? So we're now in the state of waiting for that next update to come out. And he gives those all out for free, and like he's kind of stuck. He's not stuck in drama. Like that's not the right way to put it. But there was definitely some drama on the latest patch because he did finally hire in some help to get the 1.6 together, right? He's in the process of working on another game. He had intended 1.5 to be the final patch, but there were some things that needed to get fixed up. Plus, there was a ton of modding stuff in the community that people were still really like clamoring for and still modding the game heavily in order to get. So he ended up bringing in like a pretty high-end modder. I forget the modder's name that he hired in. They're in the credits for the 1.6 though, and like he brings this person in to help. That person got really weird about like profit sharing and like asking for like some side of the profits going forward, and he's like, well, I don't charge for updates, so I'm not sure what profits you want. Like, I'm not going to start giving you money for games that I've sold in the past just because they download this patch. Like, that would be wild to bring to suddenly, especially the level at which that game took off for a while. Like, he's like, that's just not going to happen. And it became this huge thing in the community of people being like, I don't know, this guy came in and did work. I feel like he should get some type of money. But he's like, yes, but he came in to work on a game that infamously or famously, depending on how you want to look at it, doesn't ever charge for updates. He came in knowing he was going to be working on a patch that people were not going to be paying money for. Like, why would you come into that? Like, it's not that he didn't get paid. He did get paid. Yeah, he's
but on top of that,
he wanted on top of that, he wanted some percentage of something. And like, there was some talks about like making sure that he was involved with Stardew Valley 2, which Eric Barone, Concerned Ape, has been like, I'm not making a Stardew 2, so I don't know. Like in a weird way, it's like it'd be super disingenuous for me to create a contract that would guarantee a thing I know will never happen. Wouldn't that be really fucked?
Yeah, right. But like, if that's what the guy
really
wants,
wild
like,
for me to just be like, yeah, sure. When I make Stardew 2, you can be involved in that, kid. It's like, okay, yeah. It's so like even in a game that, again, has had its share of whole, we're going to do final patches, surprise, there's a new patch coming out in a month. Like, that whole attitude to it, they have divorced themselves from a lot of this drama by being free, but not all of it. Yeah. Right? It's wild.
Yeah. I guess the other thing I want to talk about while we continue talking about video games is that whole Olympics, like, esports thing. I'm very interested in that. Right? I like the Olympics. I was pretty excited that I wasn't going to have to watch the Summer Olympics, but it was mostly as a joke because you can't watch anything else in this house once the Olympics are on. It just doesn't happen. Though I am very happy that, like, deep in it. Yeah, like I fell asleep watching them on the couch last night. That's a real thing that happened. And I'm not mad about that at all. But like,
what were you watching?
I don't even remember. It was mostly the Paris primetime stuff, so it was kind of like the 8 to 11 recap of everything that happened during the day, which is weird because like we have Peacock, so we're watching the events when the events are happening, right? So that primetime in Paris thing is interesting, but like, the last thing I saw that I remember seeing was the high dive competition with the woman who missed the board. Like, she jumped and then she shifted to the side and, like, only with, like, half the side of her foot did it. And still did the dive. Like, but, like, lost points because of her technique and not staying on the board.
There's been some wild stuff in that regard. In the men's gymnastics, the team captain there, Brody, who was, like, this big story this year, that was supposed to be making a huge comeback. He's the oldest kid on the team. He's 24. The rest of them are like 19 and 20. And like, it was supposed to be this big thing for him to come back, and he completely whiffed some of the pre-qualifier stuff. Yeah. And it's been this huge upset out here because gymnastics is huge in Utah.
Is he the one who fell off the high bar? Yeah.
Fell twice, I believe. Yeah. And like a huge whiff. And like that's all like anybody can talk about out here because Utah gymnastics feeds into the Olympics gymnastics teams. Like they come here to train in some not like across the board, but it's a big place for people to come and train for exactly that. So like that's all anybody can talk about right now. And yeah, it's been wild. There's been some interesting stuff already. We've been watching air rifle, handball, rugby. We like
that
some of
rugby
the
sevens
stuff.
is friggin' awesome. I love it. It's so much faster. Like I love rugby. Will has taken me to a fair share of rugby bars. He took us to a fair share of rugby bars. Remember we did what, Beefo Barley's or wherever we went at the mall?
We went searching in Ohio for like one place that would be playing rugby that day. Yeah.
And then they weren't.
Yeah, right. We went into this. They were like, we asked if we could put it on, and they were just like, "There's rugby today," and we were like, "Oh my god, this can't be like you're selling yourself as an Irish pub." I know you're not because you're a fucking Irish pub in the middle of Toledo, Ohio. But like, come on, man.
At the mall, as an anchor at the mall too.
Yeah.
No
Hey,
offense.
wherever you go around the world.
Not even an anchor in the food court, right? Because the food court it's an international place. You can eat food from everywhere.
No. This was like behind the Macy's.
Yeah, this was the other side of the mall from the food court. We weren't even allowed to take our little ride on animals that far. That was a day. But yeah, I do enjoy watching rugby. But rugby sevens, like the smaller teams and the 7-minute stuff, like that is fun. Like that is it's sort of like the 3-on-3 basketball, which I don't understand how there are people who don't understand 3x3 basketball. Like,
well, what's wild about that is that like, I've seen a fair share of pickup games in my life, and the majority of them have just been some simple 3-on-3 games. It's really like you don't often get like 20 guys together. That's wild.
Yeah, it's just I don't understand how it's just basketball. There's just 3 guys on each team. It's still a full court. Like it'd be one thing if it were like street ball, where it is specifically 2-man teams and played on only half of a court.
Yeah.
Like that. Like. I don't know. I just don't know. But yeah, like that's it. But yeah, that's the last thing. Like so, but the reason that like I remember that as the last thing before I fell asleep was my father being like, "Oh, I watched this at 5 a.m. today on Peacock," and like, "Oh, okay, cool, right?" So it is very nice that because of the time that we're in and the fact that Peacock has like. Steve Colbert made a joke about like they're looking for events to run because they have to fill all this time on Peacock, and it's like no, they don't though. They're saying they're doing like over 30,000 hours of Olympics coverage on Peacock because they literally just have a camera guy from Universal there taping everything, or if they don't, they're just buying the license to the feed that anyone can buy in order to put together like highlights and then just showing that feed. I mean, that's like, of all the things I learned while I was at sea, that was the big thing that like was brought to my attention because for the World Cup, they just bought the feed because they weren't going to have the World Cup. And it's a freaking cruise ship, right? That's also pretty international. So the fact that they're like, yeah, no, we're not going to have the World Cup this year. None of the channels that we're partnered with are showing it, so you're shit out of luck. And then, you know, we were partnered with, like, the AV as, like, technical people, and they're like, can't we just buy the feed? Like, this is how much it will cost, and you'll be able to literally broadcast it to every ship in the fleet. And it will cost you almost nothing, but it will make you money because more people will be in the crew bar to watch the games.
Yeah, people are going to be interested in this. Like, it's definitely a way to draw people into various,
Yeah, and then the going to the crew bar during World Cup was awful. World Cup soccer, by the way, because I know they have a Rugby World Cup. There's a whole movie about it called Invictus. There's also... people know that it exists, but I'm just making sure that when I say the World Cup, a lot of sports have World Cups. It was World Cup soccer or football, and you could not go into the crew bar. Like, it was that bad. It was that busy. It was that packed with people, and like but that was when I learned that you can just buy like a not great feed of like cameras that are there. Like they're not zooming in on players. You just literally get to see the game.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that's what Peacock's probably going to broadcast as like Olympic coverage. And it's great because my father, who is home as a retired person with not much else to do, he's watching all the games live. So then when prime time is like the swimming, he's like, I watched the swimming already. I could tell you who won. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, so we don't need to watch swimming, right? We can maybe watch the Sox game.
No, we're still gonna watch swimming and then talk about it.
Yeah, but we all know who won. We're still gonna watch swimming and then talk about it. Okay, but like that's pretty great. But to go back to the Olympic esports thing, that also comes at a time right now where there's a huge question about new keyboard technology. Have you heard what Razer introduced to their keyboards with SnapTap? Okay, so
are we bringing the nub back? Are we getting rid of the mouse? We bringing it back to the nub?
No, we're not bringing it back to the nub. I'm sorry, but okay. So you know, like how a mechanical keyboard works, right? Is that when you push down about halfway down, it actuates, and then it bottoms out, and then it comes up, and then once it comes up, that's when it stops actuating, right? Like that's how that works.
So that's why you can hold down a key and it will type the letter out 1,000 times, or you can just type it quickly and it won't. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
And you also don't need to go down all the way. You can just go down that half time. That's why, like, if you have a tactile bump or something like that, you don't need to bottom out all the time.
Right.
Because
there's a big movement right now in mechanical keyboards and customizing your keyboard, and because people have different opinions, different feelings about what they want that to sound like when it happens, how they want it to behave, how far down they want to be able to compress before it does this or that, and what they can do if they So, but this is how the custom keyboard kind of revolution has started right now, and it's been going on for about 3 or 4 years. People have been super into building their own keyboards for a while.
Right. So Wooting is a company that has it so that it activates like half an inch. Like it activates hyper early, but then it still has to go down and travel past that point before you can activate it again. Now with SnapTap from Razer, which is a thing that it's software based. It's not just hardware based. It is 100% something that they did a firmware update to the keyboards that allow this to happen, and it can be switched on or off. SnapTap mode, in any instance where 2 opposing directions are detected, it will register the last input as priority. This means your character will no longer stop moving in the heat of battle when 2 opposing direction keys are pressed. Instead, you can now change direction instantly without having to release the previous key. We recommend using SnapTap mode together with Rapid Trigger mode for even greater responsiveness. So you're holding A to be strafing to the left. You hit D, you immediately start strafing to the right. And it is this huge thing of whether or not that is cheating in like an FPS game. Like
if
Valorant.
Some people have access to it and others don't. I mean, it's gonna be kind of big.
Yeah. Like that's like this whole thing. So like as we are now 5 days from when the Olympics announced we're going to do Olympic level esports, like they're not doing this at a time where all is good in the state of esports.
I mean, nothing, but will
it ever get to that point?
And
exactly.
I think in a lot of ways, this goes to the conversation that we were having in the very beginning about this, is that by establishing a literal committee, by establishing an industry, like a company that can say this is what we deem to be the standard, right, and holding people to that standard, and it's not, and just much like the Olympic Committee existing and the Olympic sports existing hasn't stopped intramural soccer from existing. There will still be other ways to play if you don't want to play in that environment, but like this idea that there will be a standard that people can kind of work towards is important, right? So like, in a lot of ways, it's kind of the answer to these kinds of problems. If they establish that this like Razer technology with fast tap and all of that is the standard. So if they want to play, if you want to play at that level, you need to be able to get your hands on that technology and learn it and work with it. Like then that's what it is. Or if they say, yeah, right now we are not allowing this. We are saying this is not allowed in this specific style competition. In order to qualify for this, you cannot be using this. Then that will become this. That, you know, that'll become the thing that people work towards. And so it is always good to have rules, even if they're only there so that you understand what you want to break. I am not saying that rules necessarily need to be followed at all times. Quite the fucking opposite. Anybody that knows me understands certain issues that I have in that regard. But on the other hand, you still need to know what the rules are, right? I want to know exactly what rule I'm breaking when I am breaking it.
When I break this rule. Fair.
Yeah.
That's a fair argument.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's exciting. But like that thing, I mean, to watch it, like I watched a whole video, like, is this keyboard cheating? That like, it makes these games look so much smoother because you don't have that like jank little moment of.
And then, you know, as is always the case with any kind of like technology in this regard, I wonder the ways that will also apply outside of its intended industry, right? Because they clearly, if this is the language that they're using where they're talking about character movement, heated battle, and all of that sort of stuff, like if that's the language that they're using to sell it, then obviously we know what their market is for this concept, but it's not going to survive on that market alone. Like it cannot be this like special proprietary technology that's only available to elite gamers, because much like we're talking about, it's not going to go far, right? They need to also establish ways in which it helps people taking notes, right? Like typing, like anybody, like how does this affect certain things in like Excel and shit like that when people are trying to put together like tax documentation and financial like documentation, like are they promising like that this will come along with like better corrective typing and better libraries in terms of autocorrect and stuff? Like that would be wild. Like I'm curious to hear what else this can do besides gaming, because that will tell me how long it will last, and the longer it lasts, the more likely it will be adopted back in gaming by the rest of the world, right? Yeah. Is this going to be some type of technology that they're going to be willing to license out to other various types of companies to do, you know, maybe not exact versions of this, but their version of this, right? Like, are we going to find that there's an answer to Razer from some other company?
Yeah, and it's just so strange to me. It's that whole Bader Meinhof type thing where, like, once you learn about something, you see it everywhere, because I had only just found out about the Wooting keyboards through their usage with that game Osu, the rhythm game that like got a lot of attention recently because a big cheater was like discovered in it. Like he was, nice. Yeah. So like it got this whole focus. That game looks insane. I don't think I could ever play that game, but like watch some people play Osu, OSU exclamation point. It is impressive to watch people play it. And it's really sad that like the guy who was already really good at the game was like, I want to be the best, so I'm going to cheat to do it. Because it feels like
the way, man.
Yeah, unfortunately. Right? Billy Mitchell. But those Wooting keyboards were kind of developed specifically with that game in mind, so that you could do, like, make sure that I pressed the button and that's when it activated. Yeah. So, and then to find that, like, Razer did this whole snap tap thing that, and you're right, like, I mean, Razer is a gaming keyboard company, right? They're not selling keyboards that you're supposed to bring to the office. In fact, I learned that firsthand, because, like, when I moved to have my own office to be the assistant of the person that I am at my current job, I'm like, I'm going to get me a nice Razer keyboard because I want a mechanical keyboard. And then I'm like, oh, this is hella impractical in an office environment. And that's when I found Ducky, right? Look at your Ducky keyboard, Sejohn, smile. And the fact that they're like, yeah, we make mechanical keyboards, and sure, you can use them for gaming, but they also have practical real world applications.
Right, right.
Like,
And that's and I think that's going to be the big thing is that if Razer wants to get away from accusations of this being cheating, then they're going to need to kind of open up the idea that no, this could be available for all sort like this is going to become such common use like technology that everybody will have access to it, therefore it can't be cheating. If you're working on a board that doesn't have this, that's your choice at this point. They need to be able to say that because otherwise it is just pay to win. It's a pay to win feature, right?
yeah. I mean, for typing, I think this is excellent. The fact that like I could be typing and if my finger is not off the last key, but I hit the next key and the word's still going to come out, like this would be huge in terms of like helping my typing increase. I remember when I got my first like N rollover keyboard and just how much faster I could type because it wasn't one of those situations where like, oh, sorry, too many keys are active on the left side of the keyboard. Like, oh, okay, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean?
Well, part of the reason that we've leaned so much into AI for things like transcription services is because right now it's faster than humans can type. And it's not that humans can't process at that level. It's that we have just kind of hit a wall in terms of the technology. Because there have been people that have been like moment to moment typers for like a century at this point. I mean, we've had stenography, right? And back then they had to use straight up like stenographer typing board, like which is wild. If you've ever seen an old stenographer like typing machine with like the weird like not letters but what's the word? Not verbs. What the fuck? I can't think of the word. But they have like ST on one type and then like A
the phonetic
ACH
the phonetic
on another.
sounds.
Yeah, phonetic. Yeah, it's like phonetic sounds rather than actual like letters. Syllables. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
They're like literally typing like syllables of words as opposed to actual words. It's crazy. But that's because at the time that was the fastest technology to do it. But now over the years, like people have gotten just better at typing and typing on actual keyboards and all of that. I think there's still stenographer
keyboards, like they can type
keyboards
like
out there.
300 words a minute. Like it's
Yeah,
insane
right,
what they're
right.
able to do with those.
Right. And like imagine like giving people the ability to kind of push themselves even further, because there are kids out there that grew up now in front of a keyboard that type like they talk. Like there's no hesitation. The only thing stopping them is the actual board, the hardware of the board itself is the only thing slowing them down. So starting to slowly remove that limitation, we're going to get more and more stuff. And anybody that's ever watched a YouTube video with like the transcription on or YouTube's closed captioning as opposed to like paid for professional closed captioning that some YouTubers will pay for it because they want to make that accessibility better. But YouTube does offer like a free closed captioning service to content creators, but it's awful. Like the words it gets wrong, the concepts it gets wrong, punctuation, sometimes it'll just like stop if it's not picking up on voice work. Like it's getting better, but it's still not good, right? Imagine not having to lean on that technology and actually just saying, no, somebody could just type this just as fast and do it better. So we're just going to pay a guy to do that. Like is awesome. Like that's cool that could possibly be available. But I think that's what you're going to need to see more of if Razer wants to be able to justify this is not cheating. It needs to be more widely accepted outside of gaming as well.
Right. I mean, we'll see what happens. That was just a relatively new thing as people have like been getting it in their hands and seeing just how responsive it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then
but I think this all comes back to the idea of needing an overseeing body, this whether it's this committee that they've put together through the Olympics or something else that can say like this is the international standard for this activity. And like from there, you can choose to follow that standard, tweak that standard, whatever you want. But this is the understood, agreed upon basic rules of the game. Is like one of the key things that the Olympics can truly do.
Do you think? Here's a question for you, based on this whole Esports Olympics thing. Do we want to like try to make it a goal for the SAY report to get press like credentials for this event? You want to go to Saudi Arabia next year, Sejohn, to cover the Esports Olympics?
It would be. That would be a fantastically wild journey because, like, I'm just so curious what this is going to look like. What are the different levels going to be? What are the different games going to be? I mean, it's just straight up. Like, are we going to go and see people that are doing Roblox types games somewhere along the line? Like, is there going to be, because Roblox is not even a game unto itself anymore. It's like a system for creating games now, right? It is basically an engine that people are buying and learning to create on. So like I'm so curious to see how it goes, and if we can get our foot in the door ourselves, that would be wild.
Okay, so so we're gonna do it. We're gonna say it, right? We're saying it right now. Episode 393 of the Say Report. We're gonna try to be at the Olympic Esports, the Esports Olympics. I mean, what the heck? Why not, right? If we set a goal and we try to achieve it. And I didn't think that when we started recording this episode, that's what we were going to do. I was going to talk about being the toughest guy in Nintendo Land and what that whole system is like. Because, like, you know what? I think Nintendo World Championship, to go back to that, is teaching people they might be the toughest guy in their town or in their city or in their community for a game. But once you turn it out to the whole world, you're probably not the toughest guy in Nintendo Land.
There's always a bigger fish, right? Like that's what we were saying. Is like, you may be the big fish in your pond, but like the second you get out into the ocean, you realize there's always a bigger fish.
Yeah. And I don't know, man. I never really thought I was the toughest guy in Nintendo Land. I'm probably one of the best Nintendo players in Coventry, Rhode Island. If you disagree, come on, come fight it. I've defended it before. Super Mario World, that was a night and a half, and probably the first like public event I ever competed in. When someone's like, I hear you say you're pretty good at Super Mario World, I bet I can beat you. And like, let's do it then. And then that did not go his way. It's the nicest way of saying that.
Devon had a Street Fighter-esque adventure rising through the ranks.
That was it. But like, I've been to a bunch of like game competitions or like gaming events where they have finished Super Mario Brothers in under 10 minutes challenges, and I'll be the only person to complete that challenge at the entire event. And like, those are like 300 to 1,000 people events that I've been at where no one else was able to beat Super Mario Brothers in under 10 minutes. Like that, like, so that says something to me about Super Mario Brothers and Devon Decker, but I know that like I'm never gonna get a 455 on Super Mario Brothers. I don't care enough to do that. Not that and that's what it is. I personally am the reason that will never happen. All of these people out there who dedicate themselves to like perfect runs of Super Mario Brothers, I'm not saying you're wasting your time. I think it is amazing what you do, and personally, I do not have the stones to even begin to attempt that. I have, when I get home from high school, after a day at school, I'm going to sit down and beat Super Mario Brothers before I do my homework.
Yeah.
Like that's where I was at. So it is. So like, but it's been interesting to see for other people that realization that like, oh, there are bigger fish than me in the sea that is Nintendo Land from this game. But also there are the people who like don't understand that they're better than everybody else in that world, which is strange. Because like, I'm sure by this time most people have cleared every challenge with S rank, and someone responds like, no, probably not. Like, it's cool that you did it, but no, most people probably haven't done that.
It's very telling when somebody talks like that, though, who they consider to be "quote unquote" people, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, that's the real danger of those kinds of comments. Is like, you're really telling on yourself that you basically are saying, if you haven't done this, then I don't consider you people. It's like, okay,
yeah,
thanks, bud.
Yeah, it was like a real reminder of like, oh yeah, that's why I didn't really like talk on these message boards when I was younger, because it's not worth it, because these are the people on here. But like, yeah, like it's been a thing on that. And I think, like, I mean, we had just had EVO 2024, right? The Evolution fighting game thing. That's the thing that happens every year. How is something like EVO, the fighting game championships, going to get folded into an Esports Olympics? Right? Is that like a qualifying event now?
Yeah,
like,
I was going to say,
like,
at the very least, you have to imagine that they have to be considered like a qualifying company. Like what like they have to have some type of connection to, like, they must be the path towards that, right? you know, there's all sorts of wild stuff that comes with kind of shaping basically an entire genre of sport here. And that's why I was so surprised when they first announced it, that like I did not realize it was going to be its own separate event. Like how were they going to fold this in when there are so many different governing bodies out there to determine what is or isn't allowed, not to mention styles and genre of game. Like we're never going to see like survival horror like in like the Esports Olympics, right? Like that's just not going to be in that game, is it? in that at that level, right?
That's the question, right? That's a huge, like, I've gone to like regional and big events, right? Like I went to that Speed Gaming Live event to compete in Link to the Past randomizer. I got my shit pushed in. I'll admit that, right? Like I was like, oh, I'm not at this level. And it was also, I wasn't as studied as I had been, right? Like that first tournament that I took place in, I didn't do terrible in it, right? I won a couple of matches. I didn't win any of those matches at Speed Gaming Live. And it's just because like new techniques had come along and I'm like, I don't want to learn how to do that. But to compete, yeah, you have to learn that stuff. But I don't think Link to the Past randomizer is also going to be represented at Olympic Esports event, as cool as that would be. I don't think speed runs would be there, even though I think they should, right? Like a bunch of people sitting down like freaking track and field events, and like this is the 455 Super Mario Brothers race right here, right? Like we expect like people to get as close to 455 as possible. We're using warp pipes and all this other stuff, right? This is the full clear Super Mario Brothers run. Like there's just so much. So what we have to look at as a path for this is the fact that like we have to consider things that are currently esports, right? So fighting games having a huge like event yearly, that should be a shoo-in. But there's also a chance that it's not going to be, right? Like that, yeah. like that style of tournament is not what they're looking for. They might say esports and think like exclusively Valorant or Call of Duty. Or,
yeah, and then there's the cynical. This is where the cynical side has to kind of come out a little bit here, and I think you have to talk about this with the Olympics committee. But like, there also is a lot of shit that goes on behind the scenes that's not great in terms of money changing hands and decisions that get made for the wrong reasons, and that happens with the regular Olympics. Like we're not talking about this new kid on the block Esports Olympics. Like, oh, there's a danger here that corruption will occur. We know that there's already some wild shit about where the games where the games go every cycle, like how places get picked, how certain people get there, what happens when some people are monitored and others aren't, and there's already this level of kind of grossness behind the scenes with this whole thing anyway. How is that going to affect this year? You know, like where these games go from here are also going to get dictated by some people that have really deep pockets and not necessarily video games fans' best interest in mind, right? So what kind of decisions are going to get made that we're also going to have to call boo on, right? Like it's going to be really wild to see where this thing goes.
Yeah, I don't. All I'm thinking of, because we talked about Leverage Redemption and how you haven't checked it out. Season 2, Episode 3, The Tournament Job. The team infiltrates an esports tournament to stop a ruthless team owner from mentally and physically abusing his players. And it's all stuff that, like, we watched that episode and my parents were like, that stuff doesn't really happen, right? And it's like, that stuff happens in regular sports. Why wouldn't it happen in esports?
We know for a fact that like there was a Dota team probably 10 years ago now that like they found out like we're basically all living in squalor in a house, like just eating out of the same like bucket of rice for months, and like that was just the way that team was being run, and everybody was like, maybe this isn't the way that these people should be treated, because they were also like one of the top line like sports teams. Like yeah. it was just there was just this like, you've basically created a fucking barn that you're raising these people in just to play Dota. Like this is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. So like yeah, that, like, but then to go into regular sports, right? Like concussion protocols and everything that we allowed in there, right? Mm-hmm. Like sports on a global level, there is some abuse that the participants go through.
Gymnastics right now is having a huge. I
Yeah.
mean, all sports should be having this moment, and most are. But gymnastics is the one that we hear about in the news most frequently, of like finding out about some of the abuse that these kids are going through when they're younger, of all different types, like horrifying levels of different types of abuse that just get ignored at every level to all the way up to the Olympics.
Yeah. Because we want those medals, right? It's
Right.
fine. We want to be able to say the USA won the most medals at,
Yeah, so
at
just
these
like
Olympics. Like, it's like,
right. So to talk about like what rules are going to be followed, a lot of that's also going to be dictated by people that shouldn't necessarily be the ones dictating rules.
right? Like, there's going to have to be a Team USA esports team, right? Like, it's not just going to be anybody can register for the Esport Olympics. If it's the Olympics, then it should be like countries competing, right?
Yeah. I mean, that being said, we're moving somebody to live in Utah for 7 months of the year so that we can call them American is definitely
Yeah, no,
like we see that shit happen too.
yeah, it's the Olympics are not without its bruises and its black spots and all of these things that are a part of this event. And so as we sit here 5 days after the announcement of a new Olympics being birthed into this world next year, right? Which that's only 1 year without Olympics, Sejohn. Think about that, right?
Yeah.
Like, because every 4 years you have the Summer Games, and I imagine they do the Olympic Esports every 4 years as well, right? So what the hell?
And then you'll have the Winter Games, yeah.
Yeah, so
There'll only be one game in the cycle. So what do they fill that out with, right?
yeah, exactly. What is
fashion sports?
I mean, and that is, I mean, and a big debate that's been going on in the House is that, like, arbitrary game, not arbitrary is that, subjective competitions should be separated into their own Olympics. Like, my mother said that, and I'm like, that's a really interesting thing, because really every competition is under its own rules. But she's like, but it's so weird where, like, when you watch the basketball games, you know that the team with the more points is the team that wins, right?
Okay.
It doesn't matter how sloppy the baskets were. When you
As
watch
opposed to what?
when you watch a race, the first guy who crosses the line, that's the winner. But gymnastics, like, there is, like, somebody is judging them, right? And those judges are not AI, right? As much as I'm sure they'd want them to be, right? Like,
Right, but there is a system. Like,
Yeah, I know that
a
there's a
small hop
system.
is worth 0.10, a double
Right.
hop is worth 0.3, stepping out of the lines is worth 0.3. Like there
Yeah.
is a like they're not necessarily watching to say, "Oh, I liked that. Here's a 9 out of 10." They're watching and saying, "Oh, that line wasn't straight, so that's a docking of a point." Or
No.
0.1 of a point.
I understand that. I
holds
get it.
was-
That is what I said, but that was her argument. And so
Yeah.
we've been debating it because she still feels that, like, even with those things in place, that there is still a human element to it.
There's still refs at a basketball game.
Yeah,
If a
exactly,
ref doesn't
right?
call a foul, then that's a human element affecting
Yeah,
the
I
game.
agree. It's just, it's weird to say that. Like, no, there's always kind of some subjectivity to sports. There's just the rules that, you know, regulate the sport. So, like, why shouldn't gymnasts get to compete at the Olympics just because their stuff is not as cut and dry as, like, a game of rugby? Like, that's a weird thing.
But that's also my point is I don't think rugby's as cut and dry as like we're even claiming it to be in this conversation, right?
Fair.
Like,
That's
I
fair,
think
yeah.
that there is wiggle room in all of these sports for all sorts of things, right?
Right. I mean, that's, I'm just presenting her argument. But then it's a thing that, like, maybe we could have the subjective Olympic Games as the fourth one. You said fashion sports, Sejohn. What is more subjective than fashion? That's what inspired it. We said we were going to spoil the Karate Kid movies. I mean, this has been an excellent conversation based on everything. I'm not going to do it. I watched 2 and 3 again. This is because, to stay on the whole video game theme of this, they haven't...
legitimately didn't realize that was a serious
Oh, no, well, it's a real thing that I did. I just wanted to make sure. So if somebody heard that and they're like, but they never talked about the Karate Kid. When are they going to get to the fireworks factory? I can tie it all together. Dale had never seen the Karate Kid Part 2 or Part 3. And actually, we had a very lengthy conversation about Part 3 because my father's like, I've seen it, I don't like it. And I'm like, have you seen the third one? Because I don't think you have. He's like, yeah, it's the one with the girl. And I'm like, no, that's the next,
that's the next Karate Kid. Yeah, I also forget that there's technically a Karate Kid 3.
Yeah, well, because a lot of people think that it's just the Karate Kid 1 again, and it's so much more than that. Karate Kid Part 2 is my favorite Karate Kid. I will admit that. Up, down, left, right, all about it. But I love the third one. The stuff that Thomas Ian Griffiths does as Terry Silver, and the stuff that he has done in Cobra Kai, bringing that character back. As soon as they said his name when I was watching Cobra Kai, I got giddy. Because I didn't think we were going to see Terry Silver again, let alone see a reference to him in Cobra Kai. And then, no spoilers for everything that happens in that show. Right? I will just say that. But then, to watch the third movie, what he does in that movie to Daniel is crazy. That movie is one of those movies that, you watch it and you're like, oh, it's just the first movie again. And you're like, yes, it is the first movie again, but because this evil, despicable human being is weaponizing that whole story in order to gain the trust of a 17-year-old boy and then systematically destroy his life. It's insane. It's really nuts. And then to go one step further, Thomas Ian Griffiths, the actor who plays Terry Silver, I don't mean to blow anybody's mind, but make sure you're not doing something crazy, because what I'm about to tell you is gonna blow your mind. I don't care who you are, it's gonna blow your mind. He is younger than Ralph Macchio. 5 months younger than Ralph Macchio. So not only is he younger, in that movie, they're both 27. Right? Ralph Macchio's playing a 17-year-old as a 27-year-old, which is why with the 16-year-old Robin Lively, they're just platonic friends. Good job, one movie in all of Hollywood, for identifying. Well, that might be weird, right? If we make them
romantic. What's the year on that one? By the way,
1989. 1989.
Karate Kid 3 is 1989.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why?
All right. I always think of the kiss in Blank Check.
Yeah. 1994, right?
One of the fucking wildest moments in movie history in that conversation.
Right?
But yeah.
But it's okay, because it's an attractive older woman and a young man, right? That's cool. I always hate that argument. Oh man, I wish my teacher would sleep with me. And it's
because it's gross.
It's gross, man. Think about that woman would be your English teacher, your hot English teacher would have been taking advantage of the fact that you were sexually immature, right?
I don't even, as somebody that has very many times on this show talked about not necessarily agreeing with the commentary of South Park, I even have to talk about how they got that one right.
They nailed that episode, right? Miss Teacher bangs a boy. Jeez. And they not only did they get it right in that episode, they got it right by going to the logical extreme. Ike is 4 years old in that episode?
Right. Jesus. Oh man.
Yes. So so Karate Kid 3, and the whole reason behind that is that they've announced a Karate Kid style beat 'em up. They've done a couple of Cobra Kai ones.
Renounced or announced?
Announced. They've announced. Sorry.
Do not buy this game. That's not what we said.
No. Buy it 3 times. I am very excited. It looks like the pixel sort of style of River City Girls and the stuff like that. Cobra Kai was weird. I've never finished it because the levels are just so slow. I hate how slow the levels are. I have to just admit that. It's fun, and it is so for a long time the Cobra Kai video game that came out, I think it was a PlayStation exclusive. When to talk about exclusivity, it was the end of Cobra Kai, because the first 2 seasons happened and then the show was canceled before Netflix picked it up and put new life into it, and now we're on the final season, and they know it's the final season, so there should actually be an ending. It shouldn't be one of these situations where they wind up fucking themselves again. as like historically how the second season of Cobra Kai ended on a huge cliffhanger before YouTube's like, yeah, no, we're not doing any more of this. Sorry. So that game was like the logical final release for Cobra Kai, and it introduces superpowers and shit. Like, Miyagi-Do karate is all based on ice magic. Cobra Kai karate is based on fire magic. And it's like, this is ridiculous. What are you doing? But it's fun to be like, Ice Blossom! And then watching the show, we make a bunch of jokes about that. Don't watch Cobra Kai with Dale and I. We're jerks. But this announcement of a new Karate Kid beat 'em up, and it's not like the original LJN game for NES where you just play as Daniel-san. Because it's a 4-player beat 'em up in a world where like people want to play with their friends. Who do you think the 4 players that you get to play as are, Sejohn? I imagine you're not familiar with the game. If you are, I'm sorry.
In Cobra Kai?
And it's not Cobra Kai. This is the Karate Kid beat 'em up.
In the Karate Kid game.
September 20th of this year. Who do you think the 4 playable characters are?
I mean, so Ralph Macchio, right?
And Daniel-san, Daniel LaRusso.
Are they going to bring Hilary Swank's character in?
Based on what we've seen, no, she is not one of them. Just guess 4 people, and then we'll go from there.
Well, right. Well, I'm in the process of doing that. So Hilary Swank would have been that one. I assume. What's his name? The master there.
Mr. Miyagi.
Mr. Miyagi, yeah, Mr. Miyagi. No,
Mr. Miyagi's one of them.
Okay, Mr. Miyagi, Daniel-san, not Hilary Swank. Who would a 4th person possibly be? I guess also Cobra Kai. Like what's his nuts there, right?
Johnny from Cobra Kai.
Yeah, why not?
Nope. The other 2 playable characters, as shown for the Karate Kid video game. Remember, it's a reason why I felt like we had to watch 2 and 3 was because of this game coming out and Dale not seeing them. One of them is Allie, friggin' Elizabeth Shue's character, who only appears in the first movie. One of the playable characters is her.
Does she know karate?
No, I don't believe she does.
I don't believe that's part of the story, right? Like, it's not like she's another student, or anything like that. Yeah.
No,
okay.
But you get to play as April in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Shredder's Revenge. Right. So,
but I would argue that there have been moments where they have shown April learn to do stuff from
not in the 1987 cartoon though, which that is based on.
April but it is canon. It's canon, but not necessarily continuity, right? Like this is that conversation.
Exactly.
It is canon for April to be able to fight. There is nothing in the current Karate Kid canon, whether it's in continuity or not, there is nothing within the canon to introduce that this character is a fighter of any kind.
Right. That's a really good point. Which then brings us to the 4th playable character. Oh, so badly do I want to say a delightful robot. But it's not a delightful robot. It's Yukiya, Mr. Miyagi's love interest, who he left Okinawa after, like, being challenged by her arranged husband. She's the 4th playable character. A character who, historically, never came to America. Will be on the streets of Reseda.
Some story in this of her, like, coming to him? And,
by all accounts, it takes place in the events of the first Karate Kid movie.
I was kind of hoping you were going to say Jaden Smith. That'd really thought you were going to blow it.
No, that's not it. It is Daniel, Mr. Miyagi, Allie, and frickin' Yukiya are the ones who are shown in the trailer. And it's just like, well, we need to watch the other movies then, right? Like, that has to happen. Mm-hmm. Because we're not playing the new Karate Kid beat-em-up game on release day. Dale and I being the beat-em-up people that we are now, but like, what? What is that? I don't know. But that's why we watch the movies. And Dale said these may be my new favorite 80s movies. It may have dethroned Back to the Future for her, which is insane if you know Dale.
I mean, yeah, the Karate Kid series has always been a blast. I mean, I even really do the joke about Jaden Smith is really honestly in good fun because like I even enjoy that one.
By all accounts, the new Karate Kid movie that's coming out, which I don't know if it's going to incorporate Cobra Kai at all, it is going to be Ralph Macchio meeting Jackie Chan's character from the Karate Kid reboot.
Awesome.
Like,
Awesome.
So who knows what's going to happen? I guess the Shadow knows, Lamont Cranston. All right, so this has been a lot of talk about sports and video games and competition. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring to this one, Sejohn, that like got stifled out by this insanity? I mean, you brought up the Olympic Esports.
We talked about the video game esports Olympic stuff. We talked about the actual Olympics. I mean, it's been a crazy week. I know that we have not touched on everything that we normally would with some of the stuff going on with like Comic-Con and stuff, but we're kind of waiting for Comic-Con to kind of finish itself off so we could talk about that. You mentioned Deadpool Wolverine. We're gonna try and get to that. I mean, we're gonna definitely have to get to that because of the implications. Even I, who have not seen the movie, know that there's some stuff to talk about in that regard.
Yes, which is one of the reasons why we're not talking about Comic-Con, as that there's some other things going on politically that I'm still not ready to talk about. I had a brilliant JD Vance joke, and I'm like, you know what? It's not worth it. It's not worth it to open that box yet.
No, the only thing I've been able to bring myself to really think about with JD Vance is, I think I even told you this, is that I'm just really happy to see that when Adam McKay finally makes his Trump movie, that Will Forte will have a standing role waiting for him.
Yeah, it'll be. That's a good one. And it's more people will get it than my JD Vance joke. But we'll get there. I'm gonna tell it eventually. Don't worry. It's just that like I'm not prepared for it. You know, here's the thing. I know that we've already got a lot of stuff promised. Have you played any more of the TMNT Splintered Fate since that night that we got together?
I have. I haven't gotten very far, but like because of the loop of that game, that's like I still have like I've leveled up guys, but I have not necessarily like gotten much further story wise or anything. But I'm also finding it to be a lot of flash and not much substance, but it could be because I'm not getting very far in it. I don't know. There's a lot of cool stuff in it. I really do enjoy it. Here's the thing. I'm glad that it's only $30. If I had paid $60 for that game, I think I would have some really sore feelings right now. But so far, I am not feeling that way at that $30 price point. I do feel like I'm getting a lot of time out of it. I'm showing it to friends and they're enjoying it, and the references are cool. And like I said, I like the look of some of it, but there is definitely a shallowness to it that I have not been able to get past yet.
I yesterday broke through that barrier. I got my first legendary power, and now I understand how things like interact with each other to have those sort of like dual things. Like I had the Hades moment where I realized everything that I'm working up to. I finally like understood how to build a turtle well. I'm using Raphael, and I finally understood like what to emphasize for him. So I actually feel like I'm building and communicating with the game.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I have not had that moment.
Well, I think that what we should do, like to actually discuss it, right? We should try to get some game in that this week, right? Even if it's just a run a day to like try to communicate and get through it, if we can do that. So we can give people like an actual like judgment of everything. I have not finished it yet. I have gotten to what I believe to be the final biome of the game, but I have not gotten to the final boss. So, yeah. I was surprised to find out that the third biome was not the final biome. I really thought that was going to be the last one.
I had some people. I have some people that have been playing. You know, we've had people visiting and things like that, and we have had more fun showing off like Thousand Year Door and than I was with Turtles was not necessarily landing, and that was straight up like multiplayer we all could play, but they were rather handing off like the controller and doing some fun stuff in Thousand Year Door, and I was like, all right, fine, this is where we land.
And I get it. I mean, the online, I'll have more of this information. I'll make sure I know everything on it. But by all accounts, seems like it was a late addition to the game, because it was an Apple Arcade title. That's where it started. Apple Arcade exclusive before coming to the Switch. And then eventually it will come to Steam. And with most multiplayer, like beat 'em up style games, there's not a lot of learning that needs to happen, right? It's mostly like, this is how you move, this is how you punch, this is how you jump. Let's go, right? You'll figure out the rest as you go. The learning curve on a roguelike style, like multiplayer game, is steep. It's a steep curve.
Yeah.
So like, it's not one of these games where like you can just jump in with people. Like, I did some live multiplayer, and it was a couple of us who've been playing the game, and someone new who was their first time with it, and the questions, and it's like, like you can read through everything, but like right now, just like whatever makes you stronger is probably what you should emphasize, and then we can have a deeper conversation later on. And it's just like, thinking about that, I'm like, we're doing them such a disservice to say that, but it's because like we know what to do, and it's like, yeah, it's a weird sort of situation that I just got to play the tutorial for the game this morning. And that's because I played online with somebody who...
Oh, right. I forgot when we played, you didn't go through that part.
I didn't go through the tutorial. Like, I just went right to online play. So I finally got to play the tutorial this morning, and that's because I did online play with somebody who had just started a game, and then my game was like, hey, we noticed you never did the tutorial. Do you want to? And I'm like, I guess. And I guess I'll play as Leonardo. And then I was bummed out when I found out that there's no way to beat that final play. I'm like, I know how to play the game, right? Like, I could skate around them, and I could do more damage to them. And then, like, I did a good amount of damage, and then the fight just ended. And I'm like, well, I didn't die. Like, it's just one of those, like, 1,000,000-foot soldiers ambushed me. And I'm like, okay, all right. So, yeah, we'll have more on that one, just a little bit. I'd like to finish it before I give a full assessment on it. But the legendary power stuff really, like, completely changed the game. And, like, now I'm actually reading and understanding what things do.
Yeah, I'm going to hold on. I got some other stuff I want to say, but we clearly need to talk more about it in a deeper conversation.
Yeah. And that's not the time, right? We're at the end of this thing. So anything else you want to make sure is said before we send this one over to Will for his final stamp of approval?
No. Just, like, really curious to see what's going to happen with some of the Comic-Con information that's come out. We'll see what's going on with some of this new video game info that's come out with the Olympic stuff. And, like, there's the entertainment as a whole right now is really still struggling to find its footing, which is the same story it's been now for a few years. And so, but hopefully these kinds of things that we're seeing, these decisions that are being made, are going to start kind of really settling where we're going to, how we're going to see movies and how we're going to play video games over the next few years. Yeah,
right. Again, and we're not talking about Deadpool Wolverine, but to see that it's basically the only thing playing at the local theater, that's crazy to me. Show times of Deadpool Wolverine start every 10 minutes throughout the day.
I'm really hoping this is going to be the one that really brings them in. I mean, I don't know why it wouldn't be, but, nothing has, so why? I don't know.
I don't know. And I guess the last thing I want to say is Horizon and American Saga. It came to rent on Prime, and I was all prepped to watch it, and then I saw that 3-hour runtime, and I was not as excited. Like, I still want to watch it. I want to support Uncle Kev, but 3 hours just...
For a part one.
Part one.
Which like... I'm not even necessarily opposed to that, but I just want people to be aware that is like the idea, right? It's like this is gonna be a like, and
I've watched him do 3-hour movies before, right? I've seen Dances with Wolves, so it's not that, but it was one of those things where like, okay, well, like he knew what he was doing here, right? So I expected them to maybe be tighter. Nope, 3-hour, 1 minute. And I'm like, I was going to say the family watched this, but my father's like, I'm out. I was excited, but everybody says it's awful. And they even canceled the second movie. And I'm like, they didn't cancel it yet, but you're right. I get you. I don't know. But so maybe if I can work up the stones to actually sit down and do it. But seeing that 3-hour runtime, I was like, man, I was excited, but... And here's the thing, I wouldn't have cared if I was going to the movie theater, right? I wouldn't have even looked at that. It's knowing it's at home and like, when am I going to get 3 hours? Like,
yep.
I don't know. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Say Report. If you want to join in on the conversation, you can see the photos that we referenced, the articles. Please join our Discord. Right now, if you go to our Facebook page or our X, formerly Twitter account, there is an invite to join our Discord. We'd love to have you. If you're in the Discord, or if you're able to give us any cheat codes to get press credentials for the Olympic Esports tournaments happening in 2025 in Saudi Arabia, we'd also love to interface with you, because the Say Report wants to be there. I'm really going to dedicate to maybe making this happen. So you can do that in the Discord, or send an email to thesayreport@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you. Also, if you just want to send an email and it's for me or Sejohn, just make sure you put our name in the subject line so that it can be distributed appropriately. But until then, thank you so much for joining us, and Will, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.